portion, and then the whole reason we're doing a lot of these short files is because of Black History Month, so I'll get
Right.
into some of those challenges maybe as well.
Sure.
What made you get into the electrical industry in the first place?
I was working at the post office at, I think it was around 1969 or something like that. And one of my high school classmates who worked in a different section, he was telling me that evening that he was starting his apprenticeship in 134, maybe 69 or 70. But anyway, I said, what are you talking about? He said, well, he was explaining stuff like that. Then he said, go down to the Urban League, all right? At that time, the Johnson administration had put aside a lot of money for vocational training and education. And there was a big uproar in around 67 or something like this with the building of the University of Illinois at Chicago. The community activists shut down that job. That was a major construction site, So with that shutdown, the building trades met with the community leaders and stuff and said, what can we do to make this thing work? And so they opened up the apprenticeship programs, right? And the Urban League was hired as like a third-party entity to screen people so they could meet the qualifications. The standards weren't reduced and anything like that. So the Urban League would test you and sign you up for whatever trade you wanted to do. So I went down, had an interview with a person down there, took a series of tests, and they said my test scores were pretty good. I told them I wanted to be an electrician. They said, well, we'll notify you when the electricians have a sign-up. So I went home, and then they called me, and I got down in line and signed up and started my apprenticeship in 1972. What surprised all of us was that we were familiar with the old regiment, which is you went to school one day a week. Your second, third, and fourth year was a 4-year training program at that time. And then the second, third, fourth year, I think, went every other week. And so it was really not a concentrated educational environment, right? When we got called, I was in what they call RAT-2, which was an acronym for Residential Apprentice Trainee. We were the second group to start that whole new program. And it somewhat still exists today with the concentrated, 11 weeks of school, Monday through Friday, no income and all that kind of stuff. So that was an adjustment, which I didn't have too much of a problem with because I had been successful in school because of my parents, all right? You never know what happens, but that was a benefit to me. But it was about 6 of us and 6 African Americans in the group, and we got together and we studied together and stuff, and we were able to make it through. But it was quite an adjustment. It was an adjustment, I'll say that. Served my apprenticeship with Henry Newgard and Company. It was the oldest electrical contractor at that time in the local. They had been in business since 1882 or something like that. It was a good company to work for. Ray Klecker, who was the superintendent of the electricians, was who I consider him a prince of a man because he really made sure I was trained. I worked on all kind of work. He stressed the importance of that to me. In fact, he told me one time, he said, you need to learn more about this industry. So he just moved me around. I worked in the hospitals, the manufacturing plants, the bank buildings downtown, office buildings, So I had good training, Sears Tower. Yeah, that was a big one. Yeah. Well, the contractor, Henry Newgard, we had the Edison work, and the Edison work was bringing in all the high voltage and stuff to be stepped down to be used for lighting and power and stuff like that. And we started in the lowest, there are 3 levels below ground, and we started in the lowest level, which is level 3, lower level 3, all the way up to the 103rd floor, distributing power throughout the building. And well, I got there. Let me see now. I got there around June, maybe, and we stayed there all through 72. 1981, That's when I started teaching the apprenticeship program. I was the first African American to teach in the apprenticeship training program.
How was that?
It wasn't, we had a good staff, and I had been through the program, so I was familiar with the coursework and stuff like that. It was the young people getting adjusted to you, all right? You know, I'm sure for a lot of the white apprentices, I was probably the first black instructor they ever encountered. A lot of folks came from the suburbs and stuff like that, hadn't been exposed to African Americans, blacks, or whatever like that. But we made it, right? Had a few people who had to make adjustments with, but we worked it out. I knew I had to be very professional, all right? I knew I had to always command respect, and I did that by giving respect. I never used profane language, especially when the females were present. I made sure that the males understood we had females in class and they had to be treated accordingly, and those kinds of things and stuff like that. And I really tried to demonstrate fairness when it came to accessibility and grading and things like that. I would tell the classes, you know, during break time, I said, you can come and see me at any time you want to. So you just have to understand that. You don't let it impede you or get in the way of what you want to do. The only thing that you want is the opportunity. That's all I ask for. Let me fail or succeed on my own merits. Just don't deny me because of how I look. Mike Boyle admitted the first African-American electrician in Local 134, and that was Sam Taylor. You might be familiar with Taylor Electric. And that was in 1919, according to my research, all right? So he was the first African-American. The first African-American business agent in Local 134 was a guy named Herman Washington, all right? Now Herman came out of, there was a black electricians union in Chicago. They had a state or a federal charter. They weren't chartered in the IBEW, all right? And the primary leaders of that was an organization called the Patterson Club, all right? Mike Boyle had a business agent. His name was, it'll come to me, Bob Brooks. And Bob Brooks was patrolling the South Side area, the Bronzeville area and that stuff like that. And he mentioned to Mike that he needed some help patrolling just the black electricians and stuff like this. And he had a candidate that he felt would serve that role. And I think the reason why he might have chosen Herman was a graduate of Tuskegee Institute, all right? And he's a young fellow and stuff like that. So he became the first, not only was he the first black business agent in Local 134, he was the first black business agent in the building trades, all right? And he was made a business agent in March of 1943, all right? And he stayed that till 1958. He wasn't reappointed after Mike Kennedy became business manager. The Patterson Club, they would, they would hold classes, I know, when I came into the trade at Tooley Park on Saturdays, and that would to help the black electricians with the trade, pipe bending, circuitry and stuff. They would discuss various topics and stuff like that. Then, when we had the consent decree, the lawsuit, the Ridgeway lawsuit was filed, I believe, in 1972. All right. The consent decree was entered into in 1984. In that decree, it was 40% of the starting apprenticeship classes had to be African American. All right. Judge Nicholas Boer was the judge overseeing that whole process. And I'm speaking for him, even though I don't know him. He knew that the 40% wouldn't be successful making the entire transition to journeymanship, right? But he had a number in his head. And so the industry had to meet with him periodically to look at the numbers of how many started, how many succeeded, how many were journeymen and stuff like that. So it released the industry in 1998 from the consent decree. And with that, there was a precipitous drop in the enrollment of African Americans in the apprenticeship program, all right, because there was no 40% requirement, right? So there were some teachers at the school, Jerry Shelton, Maurice King, and Anthony Griffin. They were all teaching at the school, all African American. And they came up with the Jump Start program to facilitate the process of getting more participation into the industry, you know. And when I say it's hard, you know, to get people involved, when you get young people in a room and say, you know, this is going to be a cultural shock to you because what you're getting into, and the regimen of the program, you know, can be very, very intimidating. So sometimes people just walk away. They don't want to meet that challenge and stuff like that. But they've been fairly successful in getting the numbers getting to a better percentage. I think as a union, starting with Mike Boyle, there has been a tendency to be progressive. But, you know, he admitted the first African American into the union. And then subsequent to that, the Patterson Club was given membership. I don't know what year that was, all right? Then he had the first black business agent and stuff like that. And things got better. There was really an uptick, I want to say, around 1980. Tim Bresnahan was business manager. Tim was a progressive in the sense that, you know, you could sit and talk with Tim and say this and that, things like that. So there were a lot of jobs made available to African Americans that had been made available before, primarily in McCormick Place. McCormick Place was, at that time, back in that day, you know, you could generate a nice income at that place because there was so much overtime involved. We got African Americans on the city inspectors and stuff like this. So there was some opening up. They had the black business agents, then we came on board and became officers on the examining board, the executive board, teaching at the school. So there has been some market improvement, yes. You know, could it be better, could it be more? Always, you know. Like I said, it says in the Constitution to promote, to create a more perfect union. It doesn't say a perfect union. Because I think the fathers at the time realized that there's going to always be evolvement. It's going to be constant evolving, which means there's going to be constant change. So. I stand on the shoulders of people like Herman Washington and Jimmy Moore, and some of the electricians, African-American electricians, who came before me, people like Dick Gugis and Frank Bethel, people like that, you know, that made it possible for me to be where I am. I just tried to keep the door open, all right? Keep the door open. And, you know, I had opportunities to help people and give other people exposure in this industry. So the power structure would realize that there are other people out there. You know, I'm not the sharpest marble in the drawer by any means, all right? But there are a lot of good people out there, you know, and, you know, you should take advantage of that. That I was in a position to help some people, and I did. You know, I think that if you're in a position to help someone, if you're in a position to help someone and you don't, then you're a piss poor excuse for a human being. So that's what, you know, I tried to always help people and always tried to get people to understand, you know, what this whole industry is about, you know, because I had people just take me aside and just, you know, just talk to me and explain things to me, you know. And I tried to do the same thing. Tried to do the same thing.